Good evening and welcome to Family Matters. And tonight in studio, our three guests, we are going to be talking about adoption. What do you need to know about adoption? Are you in the process of adopting a child, or have you adopted a child? What procedures did you follow? And if at all it was legal, what did you do? What was your starting point, and where are you as at now? The status of adoption in the country, it is a practice that not so many people are aware of. But in studio tonight, I have three guests, of course, who are going to be helping us discuss this. One of them is an adoptive parent. The other one is a judge with the High Court and a lawyer. Thank you very much. So many people know you, especially those who watched the shortlisting for the Deputy Chief Justice. That is a judge in the High Court, Abida Aroni. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
And Esther Sankale, adoptive parent, also works with the Adoptive Families Association of Kenya. Thank you very much. And finally, lawyer Dickson, Bebo.
Yes.
Thank you guys for coming. Adoption. Let's start with Esther, because she's in the middle of things. I know, Judge, you're also in the middle of things, but she's also in the middle of things. Esther, you have a child who you adopted. How old is the child, and at what age did you adopt the child?
The child now is 5 years, 4 months, and I adopted the child when she was 9 months old. Yeah.
All right. A boy, a girl?
A girl.
A girl?
She's a girl, yeah.
Why did you decide to adopt?
I'm a mother of 3 children, 2 biological and 1 adopted, born from the heart. And I felt I just need to give a child a home. There are so many children in children's home, so I felt if I can get one and make a change of that child's future, that's why I decided to adopt the child.
So you woke up one day, walked to a children's home, picked the child. What procedures did you follow?
I would say we sat down with my husband and we discussed about it after we had visited a children's home and found so many children living in 2-bedroom house. And we felt, why don't we just take one and provide that love and good environment for that child. So we visited, we didn't know the process at first. So we visited one of the children's home, and they told us that you have to go through the adoption agency. So we visited the adoption agency. We were given the requirement that we need to have, and that's what we did. We filled the forms, we prepared all the documents which were required, and we took them back, and then we waited for the matching, which took about 2 months. And after 2 months, we had the baby at home.
All right.
Yeah.
Dickson, she talked about papers and the processes.
Yes.
What papers are this, and what kind of process is involved legally?
There are a number of qualifications before maybe an adopting parent can be granted that desire of having that child. And we look at it from different angles. We look at it from the child's point of view and from also the adopting parent's view. So when we are looking at the child's point of view, we have to look at the age of the child. The child should be at least 6 weeks old. From 6 going on, but of course not beyond 18 years. After 18,
that's another.
Basically, that person is an independent person. And also, when we are looking at the aspect of age, we look at the age of the adopting parent. The parent should be at least 25, between 25 and 65 years of age. Then we can look at the age difference between the child and the adopting parent. At least it should be 21 years, exceeding 21 years. So when you're looking at all these qualifications generally, we also look at the character of the adopting parent. If you have been convicted before, especially on crimes which affect children under either the Sexual Offences Act or any other crime which affects children, basically you cannot be a good candidate for that. If you're homosexual, you are barred from doing that. Also, we look at the financial position, your ability to take good care of that child that you're about to adopt. Also, the courts will give you conditions of which you're supposed to meet before they grant you that prayer.
So, Judge, what are these conditions that must be met?
I wouldn't call them conditions. They're actually requirements of the law. And basically, I would just add to what Council here has said, that we expect that the applicants would be people of good conduct. And when they come to court, we require the Children's Department to do social investigations so that they can make a report to us about the suitability of the parents. We also require a guardian to be appointed who will report to the court. The guardian will also do a social inquiry, look at what is in the best interest of the child, and report to court. Then there are a host of documents that we look at. For example, what is the history of this child? Is there a report from the police? Did the police investigate? For example, if the child was abandoned or the child was lost, were there investigations done by the police? Did the home that took over the child do some investigations as well? Have they looked for the parents of the child? Is there a consent from the mother or the relatives of the child? So those are some of the things that we look at as a court.
How long is this process supposed to take?
Well, if you talk about the court process in itself,
Yes.
it shouldn't take too long. We give about 45 days to the Children's Department to investigate and report. And remember that the adoption agency will have done some background checks, so it shouldn't be too difficult for the Children's Department to do a thorough job. So it takes about 45 days for them to do that, or let's say two to 3 months. If all papers are in place, and of course lawyers come in and advise their clients, if the paperwork is okay, it shouldn't take more than 6 months to have the process done. But this really is the ideal. It can take as long as it needs to take, hopefully a year or so, depending on the papers that are brought to court and the evidence that is before a judicial officer.
All right. Esther, there is that thing about your biological children and your adopted child, how you treat them. Is there a difference, or as long as you have adopted a child, he or she assumes that position of your biological child?
Yeah, of course. The child, when the child comes home, you take that child just like your biological child. In fact, when they come home, they bond quite well, such that you can't tell which one is biological, which one is adopted, because they bond so well. They bonded so well with my daughter. She bonded so well with my son, and they are very close. So you can't, in fact, it's something you can't keep remembering that this child is adopted. Just take this child as one of your, just like their biological child.
And in terms of discipline, what do you do? Because probably if a child knows that he or she is adopted and you're going hard on them in terms of discipline, how do you balance it? How do you let this child know that you have done wrong, so I have to punish you, without making that child feel that I'm punishing you more because you're adopted?
I think what I can say on that, my child is still young, 5 years, 4 years, so we have not gone through the process of disclosure that she's adopted, but we have started slowly by slowly. So she can't connect that I'm being beaten because I'm adopted. She is able to understand, But mostly we don't deal on beating so much, but just sitting down, talking to the child and letting the child understand that you have done wrong. You don't have to beat so that she can understand. Yeah.
Okay, Dickson,
Yes,
we know that Kenyans, and especially the African setting, when a brother dies or when a sister dies, you take care or you take in his or her children.
Yes.
And these are things which are not done legally. Is it probably time that Kenyans looked at this and thought of a way of putting everything in paper? Because we have seen in the West, if I am adopting my brother's son or my brother's daughter, I must have the government certify that particular union.
I believe it's a behavior that every Kenyan should embrace, given that that child needs care and attention throughout his or her life, needs guidance from some parent from somewhere. Basically, when you take up adoption, you assume all the responsibilities of a parent. And that child also gets certain rights from yourself, including inheritance. So basically, you should not discriminate these two children. So any of the relatives is free under the law to make an application for adoption to legitimize basically the process.
But do they do it?
There are some who are enlightened as we speak. They know that they need that legal protection or to take those legal steps in order to make this one as smooth as possible for the parent and the child.
So which group does it more? Because in villages, like for example where I come from, I have cousins who have been taken in by my uncles. Does it happen that only those who are well-to-do are the ones who seek legal redress and not those ones who have a lot of property in their name?
Okay, when I look at it, basically foreigners have more requirements to fulfill, unlike the Kenyans here.
No, in the case of my brother has passed on, so I have to take in his children. Like, does the law apply to only the elite, or it applies to everyone? Because deep in the villages, it is something that is going on every day.
I think it's an issue of ignorance, so we need to preach more. Because I worked outside Nairobi for about 7 years, and I can tell you, in the 7 years, I probably came across 3 adoption matters. So it's a question of ignorance. I think we need to educate our people more and to let them know that, adoption is the way to go so that you can take full responsibility over this child and that it is to the best interest of the child, because the child then assumes rights like your own child. It's a noble thing, and I think what we do up country and what we've always done, taking care of our own, is equally noble, but we need to do it in a professional manner, and we need to go out there and let people know the benefits of going through an adoption process, and that it is not as difficult as it sounds if all the paperwork are right, and especially when you're doing kinship adoption.
All right.
Yes.
And is there a law that is made for an adopted child to use when he or she wants to know about his or her biological parents? Is that particular information backed up by law?
You see, the moment you adopt this child, that child becomes yours.
So at no point is the child entitled to know.
We do not expect them to revert back.
No, what you cut are the ties between the parent who consents, if there's a parent, who says, I am giving my responsibility and my right over my child. But as the child grows up, nothing stops the child from meeting or getting to know who the biological parents are. And I think that is what Esther was saying, that she hasn't reached that level where she will give disclosure to the child that she's an adopted child. So I don't think there's any law that says after adoption, a child doesn't get to know its roots. In fact, in developed countries, the government keeps the records, and a child is able to trace many years, 50 years down the line, who the biological parents are or what the biological family tree is. So nothing stops a child from getting to know that he or she is adopted and who the parents are, only that it is more orderly, I think, as the child is growing, to be left, you know, with the adoptive parents, because they have assumed the responsibility of bringing up this child.
Esther, will you tell your daughter that she's adopted?
Yeah.
At what age will you do that?
I think I have even started now, giving stories about Moses, about Jesus, how he was adopted. We are all adopted into God's kingdom. God has adopted us. So we start, I've already started in a very simple way, a way that the child is able to understand. And I'm happy with the progress so far, because she's happy. I even gave a story, a short story, how we took her from the children's home, and she was very happy. And she said, that was the happiest day of my life. Wow. So I was happy that she's able to understand, and she's very happy that she has a mommy, she has a daddy, she got a brother and a sister. So it's something you do. Disclosure is a process which you do slowly by age, the age that the child can be able to understand.
So, Dickson, if I am a man and I am single, can I adopt a child?
We have to look at that one. That's a very important issue, especially when it comes to the sex of the child that you want to adopt. We do not expect a man to adopt a girl. And so it's the other way around. We do not expect ladies to adopt a boy if they are single. But well, if they are a couple, it is allowed.
How many I don't want to call them cases, how many processes do you as the judiciary deal with each year?
I can't give you the numbers because it depends on how many such adoption matters are brought to us, but it's quite encouraging. It's we are busy with adoption, so I think as a country, Kenyans, especially in Nairobi and probably other urban centers, people are really embracing adoption, and I think it's a good thing because professionals and couples are now coming out openly to undertake adoption, and I think it's they're giving back to society and helping out, you know, to take care of less fortunate members of our society. So it's busy, yeah.
Right, and what sort of crime-related adoption cases do you handle as a judiciary? Because I know that there has to be there.
Probably assault and sexual-related offenses, but I don't think there are as many. I am yet to come across many of them. Yeah. Even when I was in the criminal bench, I rarely came across, you know, such offenses. So I don't think it's prevalent, unless if you're thinking about trafficking. And I think really that's an issue of policy, and something is being done about that.
All right. Esther, you are part of a group that has come together, adoptive parents. What is it all about? Is it about adopting more children or just creating awareness about adoption?
Yeah, the group is composed of adoptive parents. Which we are calling Adoptive Families Association of Kenya, which we registered about 2 months ago. And the main objective is just to create awareness on adoption encourage more Kenyans to do adoption, because a child who grows in a family is not the same as a child who grows in a children's home. So we are creating awareness and also working on the myths and misconception on adoption. And also, we are also working as a support group to support each other, the adoptive parents, and also create a platform whereby our children will have a support system as they grow.
All right.
Yeah.
And Dickson, there are those instances where a parent adopts a child, and a few years down the line or a few months down the line, you start noticing some things in terms of character. You guys are not compatible, because if it's your child, biologically you are. What do you do? Are you supposed to have that option to think twice, backtrack and say that I want to legally seek a divorce from this? I know Esther is also going to talk about that, but legally, are you covered when you want to do that? Okay,
from what point are we looking at it? Is it after confirming the adoption?
Yes.
Okay, from that time, if you tend, the court sometimes will keep monitoring, basically, the welfare of the child even after being adopted by the adopting parents. There is that period, if it's there are policies which are passed by other jurisdictions, other countries, that maybe after 2 years, you report back to court. There is a social worker who keeps visiting the home and checking out the welfare of the minor. If at all the relationship, basically if you have said the relationship between the adopting parent and the child is not good, basically there should be a report. There will be a report which will be filed back to the court for consideration. Then the issue can be revisited back.
Esther, would you return your daughter?
As we said, when you adopt a child, after the legal process, that child is yours. So we take it like you have given birth to that child. Imagine if the child becomes ruthless or not good at home, where will you take that child if it is your biological child? So the same applies. So if it is your adoptive child, take that child as yours and work towards treating this child as your own, and do what you can do, just like what you do to your biological child.
Jaja, have you had cases where parents are washing their hands? They're saying that, I don't want.
Not in the 1 year that I've been in the family division, although when I practiced as a lawyer many years ago, I came through such a case. But like Esther says, when you take parental responsibility, that is it. And unfortunately, under our laws, you don't come back. We don't have that window of opportunity where you relate to a child for 2 years and then come back. Because you cannot adopt unless you've had the child for about 3 months. But in reality, that's a short period, I think. And if it's a younger child, you don't get to, they develop their character as they grow up. So I think the way to go is the way Esther is speaking. I mean, you take full responsibility as a parent, you nurture this child. It should be your business to straighten them up, but not to, I mean, where do you take this child back to?
You don't give up on parenting.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a process.
And do we have cases where Kenyans are adopting children from outside, let's say from Uganda, from Tanzania? Are the laws different?
Nothing basically stops them from adopting from any other jurisdiction as long as they're authorized and they've gotten the necessary consent from the relevant authorities. There's no problem with that. Most of the adoption laws basically cut across.
And then we've seen cases where Madonna is adopting children from Namibia, and some feeling that this should not happen, that the children can probably get adoptive parents within. Do we have also cases where, foreigners are adopting Kenyan children?
Basically, that's a personal preference from which country you want to adopt your child from. Foreigners are allowed from a country to adopt Kenyan children, right? So basically, the most important aspect is that the legal requirement that they must have at least lived together for 3 months before the process.
There is
the
a
application.
moratorium, though, in this country since 2016 November, because there was a very bad report from UNESCO. I think our country was rated poorly in terms of child trafficking, child laundering, and so on and so forth. And it appeared as if we've commercialized adoption. Subsequent to that report, the Committee on Adoption made a report to the President, and we've had a moratorium since then. So we are not doing international or intra-country adoptions in Kenya for now. So we have been doing local adoption since November 2016. Yes.
And Esther, there are jokes that people make that you're adopted. You know, out of nowhere, someone tells you that you're adopted, even though you're not. Is this something that we should condone as a country? Because if someone tells you that you're adopted, they're trying to tell you that you're different. How would you feel if someone told your daughter that she's adopted?
I think that's why we came together as adoptive parents, at least to create awareness that adoption is normal. Adoption is something which is people needs to accept like any other. And that's why we want to bring up our children even to understand that even if they are told you are adopted when they are playing outside there, so what? They can say, so what? I'm still, my mom still loves me and I'm still part of the family. So this is the awareness that we are trying to create and also remove that monster that adoption or the child was bought. It is a bad thing. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
But as a parent, are you also allowed to not tell your child that he or she is adopted? Is there a legal provision?
I don't think there's a legal requirement that we should inform the child, maybe where he or she comes from. But of course, these inquiries always come along the way. When they reach adolescence, sometimes, even when you go to the village, some of your relatives will start informing them, do you know that you are not born from this home? So
I think it's a social moral thing.
So it's good when they hear it from the parent rather than from somebody outside there.
And have you had cases where a child is trying to break away from the adoptive family that I do not want? I want to either go back to an agency or I want to be left on my own.
Never heard of it, but I'm sure they're there, and probably they'll be dealt with at a different level, maybe the children's court. Yeah, basically, it's like having a delinquent child, basically. Yeah.
All right. And are you afraid that probably in future your daughter might want to find her biological parents and probably find a way of living with them?
I think for adoptive parents, we are told that we'll be ready for the unexpected. So if my child wants to know where she came from, I think I'll support the child. If she wants to know where she came from, she wants to maybe find out the real parents, I think I'd give that support.
Let's say you've written a will already, and this child wants to go back. What do you do? Do you write another will, or you just leave it the way it is, that in the future if she decides to come back, then what belongs to her will be waiting for her?
I think I'll not change the will. It will still remain because she's still my child. Yeah. And you see, when for biological children, there are those whom you even give them their parcel of land and they sell. So still, it's good to just give the child what she deserves.
All right. And Dickson, as a lawyer,
yes, please.
I know that you guys, you handle so many of these these cases. But what do you do if you want to keep in touch with the family, for example? Does the family come, or you, if it's a case that you handled before, you do a follow-up, or this is something that you will just sit back, wait, and hope that your client comes back?
No, many times it depends on the kind of relationship you have with your clients. There are those clients who are more of even friends than just mere clients. There are those ones who will keep updating you on the progress. After 2 years, oh, my son, the one we got, is doing well. Actually, the performance is good in school, and the likes. There are those ones after getting the orders confirming, they disappear. Until next time, maybe when they have problems.
There was a case a couple of years ago about an adopted son who allegedly orchestrated an attack against the adoptive father, and it is a case that dragged on, and guns were involved. How do you deal with such?
Yeah, I recall reading about the case in the newspapers, but this was a grown-up man. I think he was over 21, and an attack on a parent or anybody is a criminal offense, and I think it took a criminal turn, and he was convicted. And if I recall, he was asking for his share of inheritance. You know, once you adopt a child and the child becomes your child, then what happens to him is what would happen to your own child. If a child attacks a parent, then it takes a criminal turn. So there's no difference whether it's an adoptive child or your biological child. A crime is a crime at the end of the day. Oh. And I think there was a conviction. I haven't heard about it since.
And they failed on appeal.
They went on appeal.
They failed.
It failed. So yeah.
So what do you do as a parent? Because of course you are a parent of an adopted child, but biologically there has to be that connection that you have with your child, and an adopted child. Yes, there is a connection, there is love, but how do you react? I know that you'll argue as a parent, but there ought to be a difference. If your child commits a crime and your adopted child also commits a crime, there's how you relate.
Why should there be a difference?
You know, you make a conscious decision when you decide to adopt a child, and I think you must have love equal or similar to the love you share with your own child, because you made a decision and you had a reason. Either you're giving back to society, or you didn't have a biological child, or you wanted to add to the child you have. So there should be, probably, the natural instincts, I don't know, Esther will tell us, but there should be no difference whatsoever. It's something that you did at will.
Basically, it was an assumption of parental responsibility. Yes. You become that parent. You're not supposed to discriminate these children. Not.
And in fact, if you have that notion, whether biological or adopted, a child is a blessing. So if it is a blessing, you have the similar notion.
We have so many children right now living in foster care. Some are in the process of being adopted. Others, they still have to wait. But as a parent, are there cost implications if I want to adopt a child?
I think Dickson should tell us. He's the lawyer here.
Yeah, are there cost implications, and how much do I have to pay if I want to adopt a child?
Basically, it ranges, because even the societies tell you they have their own lawyers who charge about, the ones I've met, I think 12,500. They don't charge so much. But if you have the option of having your own advocate, of course.
Where does this money go to? Does it go to the lawyer, or it goes to the adoption agency, or to the government? No,
the adoption agency basically has its own. It has been taking care of this child for so long, and basically continues to take that child until the child maybe is adopted, right? So those expenses, I believe, they should attract some amount.
The homes are meant to be charitable. Whether they are, that's something else I do not know, but they are meant to be charitable homes. But the lawyers do charge fees because they're offering legal services. As to how much, I think it probably varies from one, from one lawyer to another. But what I have read is in the press is that for the international adoptions, it's quite high. I don't know about the local adoptions.
Is it in millions or it's in thousands or hundreds of
No,
thousands?
it's not in millions.
No.
We also guided by a remuneration order. There are amounts which we cannot charge beyond unless we have agreed with the clients. Basically, it will depend from client to client, just the same way advocates charge one client so much and another a different figure.
Okay.
There's no standard.
And you can also come to court without a lawyer. The process is technical, but not so technical that a party or a couple cannot obtain the format, a little guidance from the registry and, file papers. Under the new constitution, the courts are no longer technical.
The courts are really encouraging people to
So if you do not have the funds to engage a lawyer, although it would be nice to engage a lawyer, it will be smooth sailing, you can always come to court on your own. And I have seen people do that and succeed.
And actually the officers around the court precincts will guide you on which documentation is required, whom to see, the kind of authorization and consents. They'll guide you through.
Yeah, in fact, some lawyers charge fairly, of which I always say, if you take a child 9 months and you pay around 40,000-50,000, that is almost the same amount you could have used to pay a hospital for delivery. So still not much.
All right. Your association is having something is going on. Is it later this month or next month?
Next month.
What is it about, briefly?
Yeah, we want to launch it officially. That is the Adoptive Families Association of Kenya. We are planning to launch it on 27th of April in Nairobi. And we are inviting all the adoptive parents, all the agencies, the lawyers, to come and join us as we launch the association, so that we can be able to support and create awareness on adoption.
And there's something that I've always wanted to get to know. There's a parent and there's a guardian. Legally, what's the difference?
Many a time the parent is the biological or the adoptive parent. The biological, of course, you gave birth to this child.
Yes.
The adoptive, you went through that legal process in order to get this child as yours. The guardians, we have different kind of guardians, but when we look at the adoption process, we look at maybe the guardian ad litem. Yes, the one who is going to take care of that child pending the completion of the process, the legal process, the adoption process.
All right.
Yes.
And the judiciary, what should we expect? I think we have probably a minute or so to wind up from your division.
That will process as many adoptions as they come, so long as the paperwork and all the processes are right, because the final say comes from the judiciary, and the judicial officer sitting on that file makes a decision that will impact on that child and the adoptive parent. So long as the paperwork and the processes are right, we are ready and willing to process the adoptions.
All right.
And at the earliest possible time.
And you guys, you had a service week. Was it last week?
Yes, we did.
And some of your colleagues were here. It was a very informative process. But Esther, what sort of a future do you want for your daughter?
I pray that she has a bright future where she'll be happy to have grown in a family environment, and she will be able to be happy and have a bright future.
Are you planning on adopting another one?
No. I have 3, so for now, no. But yeah.
Okay. Any parting shot, Dickson?
Yes?
Any parting shot? Do lawyers have parting shots? Or in law, do we have anything to do with parting shot? Because in media, in communication, if you're told to give your final thoughts, you can say anything that you want.
Okay, my final thoughts will be that we really appreciate what this lady has been doing, and we also encourage for more parents to take up such responsibilities. Let them go through that legal process so that they can be able to handle future challenges. You know, if you do not take those legal steps, you do not know what will happen in future. There are issues like succession. You never know what will happen to you. So take up this responsibility. Let's get as many kids out of the streets as possible.
All right.
Yeah.
Judge Aroni, thank you very much for coming. Esther Sankale, we do thank you also very much. And Dickson, Bebo, we thank you very much for your legal perspective. And that does it for us for Family Matters for this week. We do thank you very much. You can always stay up to date. KBC Channel 1 on Twitter. My name is Edward Kabasa. Have yourself a very wonderful evening and a prosperous week ahead.